Hey everyone, I'm Marguerite, and today my guest is Lola Gussman of the Hermes Hippie. And I am so excited to hear from her because I watched her, for instance, on a live yesterday. And she is strong, she's real, she's a beauty influencer, but she's also a corporate lawyer and a mother, and Russian living in New York, which I want to talk. And here she comes. Hello.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good morning for you, I think.
Thank you. You know what I want to ask you first is about your backdrop. Like, how did you choose in your house to make this your live area with the branch and the painting? 'Cause it's
Asking the
very,
important questions. It took me forever, and
I
it's
love
very
it.
frustrating because I have some really amazing spots where I could have a really good backdrop, but
Yeah,
they're all sort of in our like living room, dining room area.
yeah.
And I have, a husband and two kids in the house, and my 3-year-old, you just can't tell her not to be where she wants to be.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had to find, so I'm in the one of the bedrooms, and I basically kind of went by what paintings I had on the wall.
Yeah.
And I literally sat with my dining room chair in front of a bunch of different paintings. And some of them looked really weird, like I had things growing out of my head or whatever. I'm like, oh, this is green, it's a plant. And
Yeah.
so yeah, that was the idea.
Are you like a painting collector? Are you an art collector? How do the paintings get on the wall?
I think art collector is a little bit highfalutin, but my grandfather actually was an art collector. And this was obviously in the Soviet Union at a time when that was not an easy thing to do. And he had some incredible stories about how he found the art that we had in the apartment. And then my dad has picked up the mantle. So a lot of the
Yeah.
pieces that we have are things that he has collected and bought. And then I haven't done it seriously yet,
Yeah.
but um, the painting behind me, I actually bought when I lived in Romania, and it was by emerging artists there, and I fell in love with it, and I got it, and so yeah.
Neat. And then just disclaimer. So I grew up in New York. I grew up on 89th Street.
Uh-huh.
So I'm
East or
curious,
west?
East.
Uh-huh.
I'm curious, like, where in New York are you talking to us from? Where do you guys live?
So I'm now in Brooklyn. I
Okay.
was an Upper West Side girl for a long time.
Yeah.
And I've always been in Manhattan. I had zero interest in the boroughs. And then when I first moved to New York and I was 16, I mean, obviously it was a completely different world then. And I don't like the angle that I'm at, so I'm going to do this. Okay.
Okay.
Um, it's back in the 90s. You didn't really, there were Brooklyn Heights, but that was kind of it.
Yeah.
And so when we had our first child and had to look at a bigger apartment, I never considered Brooklyn because it just wasn't even an option for me,
Yeah.
sort of intellectually and emotionally. And then we fell in love with the neighborhood, we fell in love with the place that we have. And now we are huge sort of Brooklyn people and
Nice.
we love it. And yeah.
So I came on to New Beauty yesterday and asked a bunch of questions on your live.
They were so good. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
amazing.
No, you guys were so kind to both of you. It was a great interview. And I had so many questions that came up on that, but I want to really start with your name, the Hermes Hippie. Where did
Yeah.
that come from? And like, I got a comment from a friend this morning that I was actually like pretty surprised to get. And he was like, you know, he basically had a reaction to that name. He was like, a hippie is somebody who goes against convention. And he's like, Hermes is a brand that, originally created saddles for like the noble class in France. So there's something like inherently contradictory about the two terms, which I'm sure you're very aware of, and which is why
Yep.
you chose it.
Yes. Yes. So I absolutely wanted to highlight the kind of contrast and juxtaposition of what are inherent in my personality and even what I do, because my day job is corporate law, which
Yeah.
is about as conventional and boring as you can get. And then I do this beauty stuff, which was writing, and now it's photography and influencing, which has become its own thing.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, as I mentioned on the chat yesterday, when I first started getting into green beauty, it was seen as this very crunchy kind of thing, and I'm not a crunchy person at all. Um, but I'm also, I think people a lot of times, especially when I was younger, when we used to first meet me, they thought I was this absolute princess. And I remember um, a boyfriend at the time when I was in Romania asked me to go camping.
Yeah.
And it was the biggest joke amongst all of our friends because how can you even consider taking Lola camping? And then he ended up running down the battery in his car, even though I asked him whether that was a possibility. And I got the kind of, the mail, oh, sweetie, you don't know what you're talking about. And I ended up pushing an SUV down a mountainside in Romania. and,
Love it.
and so I think those are both sides of my personality.
Yeah.
But the other thing, and it's one of the things I really like about Hermes is they are, as luxury things go, kind of unconventional. They're not conglomerate owned. And I shared the story yesterday, but I love the story of the Birkin bag and how it was made for Jane Birkin because she would walk around with this ratty straw tote
Oh, is
that
that
she.
right?
Oh yeah, she was on a
That's
plane with
incredible.
the CEO president of Hermes,
Yeah.
and she had this ratty, nasty straw bag with all of her crap in it. And he was like, "You're a superstar. Why are you walking around with this?"
Yeah.
And she's like, "No, this is comfortable. I love it." And so he said, "I'm going to make you a bag that is going to be as comfortable and as roomy as your straw tote, but it'll
Got
be a
it.
mess." And so I never liked the way that Birkins have become this, it's almost like immigrant families who keep their couches in plastic.
Yeah.
And I see all these Birkins who are clearly have never been opened and they're never, like they're always, the lock is always on. And I used mine as a diaper bag, not because I'm so fancy, but because it was so roomy and it could
Yeah.
fit all of my things.
That's nice.
So it's
What
like my
color is
favorite.
it?
Sorry,
What color is the
it's
Birkin you use
brown.
for a diaper bag?
It's brown.
Nice. Do you
I
like,
use it for
yeah.
other things as well.
Yeah, I feel like it's bringing up like what my friend's comment is bringing up and what I feel like is steeped in beauty is like the topic of class and
Hmm.
like you have switched cultures. You have gone like you grew up in Russia. You're now a New Yorker who describes her husband as pathologically confident. Um, you're living in a multi-bedroom house in Brooklyn. I feel like just asking the question of how does class relate to beauty and like your journey through beauty
Yeah,
really interesting.
I
Yeah.
think it's a fascinating subject, and I think it's one that has become particularly pressing for me in light of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
Because I think that to be able to focus your attention on and experiment with and play around with um, beauty products in general, but
And tools.
specifically
Yeah, tools and
and
products and yeah.
tools, but even, like natural organic oil,
Yeah.
it is very much a privileged position to be in.
Right.
Just kind of like starting point out of the gate.
Yeah.
And I think, I see this a lot in the influencer word in general. I mean, it's a similar thing with fashion influencers, for example. You see somebody who takes all their time wearing Chanel and posing in front of pretty buildings in different cities. My guess is they don't have a second job working at the docks, right? There
Right.
is a certain inherent implicit privilege. But what's been troubling to me in the, and I realize that, if we're talking about the revolution and whose heads are going to roll, I'm part of the problem, right? I'm not, I'm a white collar worker and, what's considered a prestigious field. I mean, it
Yeah.
sucks, but it is what it is. And, but I try to be as aware of my privilege as I can be. And I think what's distressing to me in green beauty is how undemocratic it can be.
Like when do
Because,
you feel that? When do you feel that?
well, so I think telling somebody that, it's very much implicitly tied with the fear mongering,
Yeah.
with the demonization of ingredients, was saying that I again gave an example during my life yesterday of witnessing a conversation where somebody asked for advice. You know, a woman forgot her clean sunscreen before going on holiday and was asking whether she should skip lunch and save her money to buy physical sunscreen, or whether it was okay for her to use a chemical sunscreen for 3 days. And
Interesting.
women
She
came
asked you
on.
this.
Sorry?
She asked you this question?
She asked this group, it was kind of
Okay.
a green beauty group that I was a part of.
Yeah.
And so to me, it was a no brainer. It's like, why would you even ask a question, put whatever on? Like, that's, you know. And women came on and said, I would never put that poison on my face. You know, it's, and I was horrified by that. I'm still horrified by
Right,
that.
because it's like a version of elitism and kind of like an impractical. I mean, I like the point you made yesterday of like, look, I live in New York City. Like, no matter what, the air quality is going to be worse than anything I can put on my face in terms of like, you know, damaging effect. And
Exactly.
that's something I really love about you. I mean, I feel like you are strong and real and but it's also interesting your connection to green beauty because I feel like you also like you're not a DIY beauty influencer, right? I mean, do you make any of
No,
your own products?
no. And I never, um, my mother was in the Caribbean recently and she brought me back this beautiful organic cocoa
Shape.
butter
Yeah.
and cocoa butter. And I thought, you know, I'm in quarantine. My hands are super dry. What if I took some lovely organic, you know, raw coconut oil that I have and this cocoa butter and I
Yeah.
have fresh aloe. So like, what if I took this, you know, aloe leaf and, you know, took the aloe juice and mixed it up and made my own moisturizer. And literally that was the end of that. I thought about it. I
Yeah.
thought about how fun it would be and it never happened. So I'm not naturally inclined to DIY.
Right. You're
I
also
also,
you have like a I mean, my interpretation of you and DIY is like, you know, if you have a huge job responsibility, you're probably less inclined to make your own beauty products.
it's also, I think that, I mean, you know, I grew up surrounded by women who, whatever they were cooking, they would slap on their face. And I think, you know, it's
Yeah.
that proclivity I have towards and affinity, whatever I have towards
Yeah.
natural stuff. You know, it's literally my mother's chopping up cucumbers, they go on her face, strawberries, whatever. And it's ended in disaster. Her best friend ended up in the hospital because she was cutting up mango, slapped that on her face, and turned out she's wildly allergic and
Oh my
almost
God.
stopped breathing.
Yeah.
So, which is a thing that people don't talk about natural
Yeah.
ingredients. They're more likely to cause allergies,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so I get it and I appreciate the value of it. And early on, when I first started being super excited about green beauty, I loved playing with powdered masks. So
Yeah.
I'd take a powdered mask, but I'd add maybe some spirulina and I'd add manuka honey and I'd add some oils. I use hydrosols instead of water. And that can be fun.
Yeah.
But I'm also at a place where I need serious skincare.
Yeah.
And I think that you can get serious skincare. I was trying to read the comment.
Yeah.
Um, that um, you know, you can get serious skincare in natural beauty, but I'm not gonna do that by squeezing some lemon juice and,
Right. Right.
you
Right.
know, blending in some sugar.
What did you learn? I mean, I don't want to make the assumption that both your mother and your father were Russian, but I am interested about what you took from Russian beauty principles in general.
So they both are, and I'm actually, well, not ethnically, but that's a complicated thing you get to when you're from the former Soviet Union. And I'm actually strictly not from Russia. I'm from Azerbaijan, and I
Okay.
moved to Moscow when I was, so I'm a Russian citizen, but
Okay.
culturally I'm from Azerbaijan.
Okay.
Um, and there's a few things. So first of all, Russians and Eastern Europeans in general take aesthetics very, very seriously. And I don't mean aesthetics as in paintings, I mean aesthetics,
Yeah.
you know, facials and things like that. And so what in the US, you know, it's beauty school has almost become like a derogatory term with the whole, beauty school dropout kind of thing,
Yeah.
which is unfair. And there are some incredible specialists who get training, but
Yeah.
it's you have to really look for it.
Right.
In Russia, to get trained as an esthetician, it's almost like becoming a nurse. It's very, very serious. And so it's telling that so many, if you look at Rescue Spa, Anastasia Beverly Hills, and there are plenty more, but so many of them are, women from Georgia, women from Romania, women from Poland,
Yes.
because the kind of Warsaw Bloc had the lock on very serious training in aesthetics. And then there was that sense of making do, because we didn't have access to skincare for a very, very long time. You
Yeah.
couldn't go into a store and buy a moisturizer. That just wasn't an option.
Yeah.
Um, I was lucky because we started traveling to Europe fairly early, pretty much once the borders were opened. So I remember being a teenager and having, kind of breakouts, and my mother bringing back French pharmacy products.
Oh, cool.
And
Yeah.
so that, and I
Yeah.
still had my little brush to, cleanse with and all of that stuff. So I think that I actually probably have more of that beauty addict backing.
Yeah.
My parents were also super strict. I wasn't allowed to wear makeup.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I kind of, once I moved out on my own and moved to the US on my own, and I was in New York at 17, I was a club kid, and I was taught to do my makeup at the first Mac store on Gay Street by a drag queen called Jeffrey, and he was fabulous. And so I did a full beat every single day, and I had all the things and all the shadows and, like, pancake foundation. And then once I got to law school and didn't have the time anymore, I did a complete 180 again, stopped wearing makeup altogether. And now I'm in this happy medium where I can play with it and know how, but
I love that.
I
I had no idea. Like, so me at 17 and you at 17 might have looked kind of similar, actually.
right.
And it makes me wonder. I mean, that was my life, was sort of like being in a Mac store, getting my makeup done, staying out on Wednesday nights, going to clubs. Like, we were wild New York kids.
Hmm.
And I'm curious, like, what were the places you would go to as a 17-year-old? Or, like, what was the scene? Was it like bars, clubs?
So I started in when I moved to New York, so around 94, 95,
Yeah.
which was kind of the heyday of the club kid iteration of the club scene in New York. So the very first club I ever went to, hey babe, my husband just joined.
Yay. Hi.
um,
James.
so the very first club I ever went to was Club USA, and those who don't know about it, it was notorious. It had a slide inside the club, and it had a giant neon art of a hand throwing pills inside a mouth.
Okay.
So it was like the 90s version of the Man in the Moon with a Coke spoon at Studio 54.
Yeah.
And then that closed shortly thereafter, thanks Giuliani. And primarily we went to the Tunnel and Limelight,
Yeah.
Mother when it was happening, um, Palladium. So kind of those places. I only went to gay clubs.
Did you start start law school by the time, like, what year were you starting law school?
I started law school in 98.
Okay. So
So
because I just read this book basically about, like, it's really interesting you bring up Giuliani, because like a lot of the bands that came out in the 2000s were like really resentful of Giuliani for just like shutting down the club scene and like
yeah.
kind of making New York a bit more homeless and less kind of active, I think was the complaint. Like that nightlife was kind of shut down, right?
Yeah, I think every subsequent generation in New York complains about New York losing its edge
Yeah.
and not being as cool. Um, I had friends who were at, not men, people, because they're a married couple,
Yeah.
in the 70s and early 80s in New York. And there were these super cool couple. They lived in this building in Lafayette. I think it was called like the Square or something like that.
Yeah.
But Mick Jagger was their neighbor. So they were
Right.
these glamorous mad men and women. And they got to a point where their kids who were, older, but they couldn't let them take the school bus. They had to walk them and put them on the school bus because they couldn't let them walk half the block to the school
Right,
bus.
right,
It was
right,
so dangerous. And
right.
then a friend of theirs, his phone was broken, so he went downstairs to make a phone call at a payphone and got. Oh, this happened last time.
I know, I saw that. Somebody said to just flip your camera. Can you just do like the flip
Oh yeah,
camera
let me try.
button? Yeah, because yesterday someone was said,
Oh,
yeah. Okay, so now
brilliant.
no, because it makes this
Okay,
print.
thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you, whoever suggested that.
yeah.
So yeah, their friend got murdered, and they packed up their stuff and moved to, I think, Colorado.
Right,
So
right.
for a very long time, when people complain about New York losing its edge, I kind of feel like, well, but it's also safer. I think
Yeah,
now I'm there. I think things starting probably in the early 2000s
yeah,
have changed to a degree where I think up until very recently, you could be a struggling artist, you could be poor, and still live in New York and have fun. Maybe it
yeah,
was challenging. Maybe your apartment was tiny and your toilet was in your kitchen,
yeah.
but you could kind of make it work. I
Right,
don't think you can anymore. And that's why all of the cool kids are out in Bushwick or
right,
Queens or whatever else.
right, right. Do you so you're a mother
Yes.
and you have two kids.
Yeah.
You have a full-time job. You
Mhm.
also have a booming Instagram presence and blog, and you're a photographer. I want to ask you a little bit about like how you manage
Well,
your
I'm
energy.
not a photographer. I photograph things, but I'm not a photographer. I
I
want
know
to
I
make that
heard you
very clear.
saying like I'm a rank amateur. He was like you have like and you said another phrase that was really funny. You were like it makes me clutch my pearls. Um, but how do you manage your energy and your time? Like I mean, even making time for this today, like, are you like on an hour to hour
Yeah.
basis with your life?
I don't know if my husband is still on, but he can tell you that I don't manage my time.
Okay.
I absolutely suck at time management. I'm the world's most disorganized person. I'm always late for everything. Today was particularly fun because I ended up doing these long stories and now got into captioning my stories just because for accessibility. And I think it's easier when I'm
Yeah.
talking a lot. And so I did a bunch of stories. I did a bunch of stuff with my kids. I then had a long conference call at work that went over, and then had kind of like knock on calls for work. And sorry, folks, I haven't even showered. Like I basically had to just run in and barely had time to get a cable to charge up my little magnetic
Yeah.
mirror
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that I can have some light. But time management during quarantine is like borderline impossible
Yeah.
because it almost feels like time is more elastic and less forgiving.
Hmm.
So you think like I don't have to waste time showering, getting dressed, commuting to work, commuting
Yeah.
back from work. Um, and a sensible person would use that time to achieve their goals and do cool things. I use that time to sit on Instagram and just space out. But I do think, and I've talked about this on stories, I don't know how much of that is me being a sloth and how much of it is the times that we're living in and trying to manage the undercurrent of anxiety. And I feel
Yeah.
much more tired,
Yeah.
and I'm getting a lot more sleep. And just by virtue of not going
Yeah.
anywhere, I'm a lot less busy. Um, and I think it's just, we're all kind of messed up right now.
Well, I just think you're doing really well. I mean, you must have people like, do you have people at work in your day job, like before quarantine, saying, like, wow, you have like a whole side business? I mean, is that unusual to them that you're able to maintain a kind of side gig as an influencer?
Most people don't know about it
Okay.
because I don't really want to publicize it.
Yeah.
And
Interesting.
it's a kind of a conscious decision. It's obviously seen as a very frivolous thing, and or can be, I suppose. And then literally sometimes it's like, did I not come into work because I was working from home, or did I not come into work because I went to a press event? Like
Right, right, right.
I so like I don't share my Instagram handle with people, but it's a kind
Do
of
you think it's frivolous? I mean, I don't. I like beauty and self-care and rituals have been like so fundamental for me in terms of mental health and like establishing like a happy lifestyle. So I don't think the stuff that we talk about is frivolous at all. What do you think?
I don't think it's frivolous at all. And I think that, I mean, you're talking about like our fashion magazines frivolous. I mean, some people will say yes. Is the entire cosmetic industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry,
Yeah,
frivolous? I mean, it's
it's our visual
I
world.
certainly don't think so. I
Yeah,
also come from a background, my dad is a filmmaker. I've always been into
yeah,
fashion. I didn't go into it as a career, but it's something I have a huge interest in. So
yeah.
I don't tend to view things like fashion, beauty, entertainment as frivolous pursuits.
Right.
I view them as serious industries.
I liked, I found it unique. It's a small thing, but yesterday in your live, you mentioned both Annette Bening and Catherine Deneuve. And I thought that was so unusual. I mean, it gave me a sense of sort of your references. Can you talk a little bit about each of those women and what they've meant to you as a beauty influencer?
Sure, yeah. I mean, I think I try to be like ultimately in influencer world, and I love the fact that there's now a cohort of middle-aged women who are beauty influencers. I mean,
Yes.
Caroline Hirons is an obvious example, but there is so many more, and there's some that people don't know are middle-aged, and they are,
Yeah, I love what you're
because
saying. Yeah, that's true.
they look so good. But
Yeah.
so I'm an old lady, and some of my references, I try to stay as current as I can. I think I've fallen behind on like TikTok stars. Like this is where I just kind of
Great.
give up and like I don't know. You
Well, you can
guys
only
like
do so much. Like my friend this week was like, start doing TikTok. I like started it and I'm like, I just feel like it's important for someone to have one platform and then you can kind of, if you want to move on, you do it with your own will.
yeah. I think TikTok also, in order for it to be fun, you
Yeah.
have to be willing to kind of yes, Michelle Pfeiffer. I'm
Yes.
gonna mention her actually
Henry
in
Rose
line.
or something is the name of it.
Henry Rose, yeah.
Okay.
So I I mean, obviously, Catherine Deneuve. My mother was raised in France, and so French cultural icons have been a huge part of my
Yeah.
personal
I love
history.
that. I think that's so cool. It's so
Y-
unusual.
Yeah, I mean, like I had a crash on Alain Delon. Also, in Russia, European films were much more popular, so that was
Yeah.
common for a lot of people. Um, Annette Bening, I think, is very interesting to me as kind of an archetype, right? Because like I think Sharon Stone, for example, is fabulous and she's beautiful, but I get her, she makes sense to me. I think Annette Bening is scary talented. She's incredibly beautiful. And it's I hate the narrative of catching a man or landing a man, but
Yeah.
she did manage to hold on to the most notorious playboy potentially of all time,
Right.
like Warren Beatty, and who has objectively been like one of the most beautiful men in Hollywood again of all
Yes.
time. And I love that. And I don't know her life, and this is massive projection on my part.
Yeah.
But I love that her attitude seems to be like, you know what? I got my man. Like I'm happy. I am confident in my womanhood. I'm not doing shit. Sorry. I'm not
Right.
doing anything to my face.
Right.
It's just and she's still absolutely stunning.
Yeah.
Um, she also doesn't really work very much. She seems to just
Yeah.
kind of enjoy her life. And that's really rare in Hollywood too.
Right. No, that is cool. I mean, you gave me a point. I mean, I didn't know about her that like she didn't do skincare and therefore she's aging a little more like rapidly. But you make it, she's kind of like a unicorn in the sense that it's nice to have examples of people doing all kinds of different things and feeling happy
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's what it's all about. Um, I love that you said you and your mom love creams where it's like shiny and thick. Cause like
Yes.
that's for me what I grew up like. I grew up in New York, but I like my friends were always like the friends from Ecuador, Brazil, like whose mothers were just different. They weren't like the American moms. They were like
Mhm.
somehow connected to Gucci or doing something. And they always had these like thick balms on their faces and fur coats and just eccentric, like very
Yep.
eccentric women. and often without husbands, like often kind of funded from afar, and just we would
Hmm.
sort of run wild in their homes, and it was just so fun.
Yeah.
But can you talk, like, what have been your favorite sort of like shiny, thick, awesome creams over the years? Like your absolute favorites for face?
Well, I went through a long period where I had to get my shine from oils because before I switched to Green Beauty, I was using the La Mer and La Prairie. Once I switched to Green Beauty, aside from Tammy Fender, which has been around for ages and did have some creams, but I
Yeah.
wasn't crazy about the textures. I found them a little challenging. You
Yeah.
couldn't really find a really luxurious cream that was, in Green Beauty. It just wasn't a thing.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I absolutely love in the last few years, there has been an explosion. It's clearly because the technology has moved on in leaps and bounds
Yeah.
of these super luxurious, rich, lush creams that are also clean, beautiful formulas. And
Yeah.
so I have, sorry, I don't know if you can hear my daughter screaming
I
in the
hear it.
background. She's cranky
I
today.
have Eve Lom's TLC cream. Have you used that?
I haven't used the Eve Lom one. No, I'm using
Really fun.
her acid pads and toner at the moment. But
Really
yeah, I've really been enjoying the two CBD creams that I have, Laura Jones and Vivo Therapies. They're slightly different texture, but both really lush.
thick and nice.
Um,
What's the second one you said, Lola? You said Laura Jo
Vivo,
Bevo?
Bebo, so it's BEBOE,
Okay.
and they're actually were initially a fancy pod brand, and they're referred to as the Hermes of cannabis. And
Uh,
so then they transitioned to CBD because obviously that's a much easier way to make money.
awesome. Um, you said you talked yesterday about like a little bit of advice for women heading into their 30s or in their 30s. And one of the things you said was inflammation encourages the breakdown of collagen, and that it's a good
Hmm.
time to incorporate more active vitamin C's, retinols, eye cream. Um, I think the majority of people that end up listening to these are women in their 30s and 40s. Could you just talk like a little bit more about that time
Yeah,
period?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, I think that, and by the way, speaking of inflammation and actives, I just want to turn the volume up a bit. Um, I think it's very important to also say that inflammation can cause, actives can cause inflammation.
Yeah.
And
True.
it's why I'm a little bit bothered by this narrative that you have to use all of the actives and the strongest actives and all the acids. And
Yeah.
it's like, I wouldn't use acids at the same time as retinol because my skin doesn't like it. My skin reacts to it. And I see an
Yeah.
increase in dryness. I've talked about listening to your skin. I talk about it all the time. And I've learned to figure out what my skin is literally telling me. So if I'm using an acid toner, you can get that tingle that you
Yeah.
get from a good acid toner and it's working, which is great.
Yeah.
Or there is the really unpleasant stinging, like the burning. It's almost kind of
Like
like
won't go
be
away.
it won't go away. It's like you're
Yeah.
being stung by tiny bees. And then I know I'm like, oh no, this is actually
Yeah.
inflammation. This is damaging my skin. And I think there is
This
vitamin C.
this paste is amazing. It's by
Ah,
Lixer Skin. You like put it on and then like let it stay, and they like encourage you to put it into like the crevices of the eyes.
uh-huh.
And it's like you like warm it
Oh,
up in your hand, and then you like have it in the morning just like for a few minutes, and then you take it off with a wet washcloth. And like I think it's really good for like evening. It's like it breaks down dead skin cells. I
that's
got
amazing.
recommended
I'll check it out.
through Trini Woodall. Do you follow her?
Uh, I of course I know her really,
Yeah.
really well. Yeah. So
She's one of my favorites. So I want to like I mean what I want to hear is who are your favorites, cuz she's like my lady. I love her.
yeah. So I I love Caroline. I think she's great. I
Wait,
love
which
Caroline
Caroline?
Hirons. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, okay.
Um, and she was kind of the reason why I started writing my blog
Okay.
because I loved her approach, especially in the early days, that kind of uncensored, mature, and I don't mean mature as in not making poop jokes, but just older.
Yeah.
Um, and but also very kind of ingredient driven, thoughtful.
Yeah.
I love Renee Gothamista. I'm not
Yes.
objective because she's a friend, but I do think that she is incredibly thoughtful. She is
Yeah.
incredibly well informed, and also just listening to her videos is like ASMR. She's so
Yes. And her very
calming and
gentle. Yeah.
does it so well. It's wonderful. I don't listen to a ton of, or don't follow a ton of beauty influencers outside of the green beauty space because by nature of what I do, I have to follow the green beauty folks
Yeah.
and I have to know what's happening in kind of my world.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, allergies, not anything else. You have to give those disclaimers when you call. And so it can become, and because I'm somebody who naturally wants to experiment, wants to try all the things, it's very easy to become overwhelmed and oversaturated. And I hear about a new product and I'm immediately like, I got to try this, and I
Yeah.
just need to kind of curb those instincts.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and those two women are kind of conventional. I'm not going to say bloggers because Renee
Yeah.
doesn't. Well, I guess bloggers, influencers, whatever.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are a few folks in the green beauty space that
Yeah.
I
Who do you
really
love
love.
in green beauty?
Sorry.
Who do you love for green beauty?
Um, so I mean, I have to say that one of the things I find challenging in my own space,
Yeah.
and it's, how do I put this? Because the way that bloggers make money is through affiliate relationships,
Yeah.
there is a lot of sameness
Yeah.
in terms of the content that gets put out by people whose lane is strictly green beauty. And I think the reason I talk about all these random brands that nobody's ever heard of is A, because I still don't monetize, and I should, but I don't really use affiliate links. I'm getting there,
Yeah.
but it's not my model currently.
Yeah.
But also, I'm not that stuck on only talking about clean beauty products.
Yeah.
And so there are a lot of people whom I love, but in terms of kind of learning new things, I always feel like I personally don't. But I think, oh, well, speaking of women in their 30s and 40s,
Yeah.
Worrell, Sarah, she's fantastic.
Can you say that one more time?
WHOORL.
Okay. RL. Yeah.
And she has a great sense of humor. She's gorgeous. Her kids are gorgeous. But she's just
Cool.
really sort of fun and self-deprecating
Yeah.
and smart. There is Molly Mizonpure who talks about um, more stuff at the home and for the family,
She's,
which is
what's her account called?
Mizonpure.
Maison Pure. Okay, we'll check her
Mm-hmm.
out.
Yeah, and that's I think useful because that's not something that I delve too deeply myself,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
don't necessarily know a lot of the stuff. And then for some reason, I mean, I know what reasons quarantine bring, but I'm blanking on like a million people, and I know
Yeah.
we're going to end the live, and I'm going to be just like, oh my god, I can't believe I
No,
didn't
that's fine.
mention
No, I just
all these
love getting
people.
shout outs. Just a couple is nice. And then we link them to you and everything. I loved your advice about breakouts. Like you talked about evening primrose oil as like a supplement that you take that's been hormonally balancing.
Hmm.
When did you start taking that and what have you seen? Did you take that as like a totally menstrual 30-year-old, 20-year-old, or did you take it a little bit later?
No, I honestly, I've always been a supplement person and an herb
Yeah.
person. And if you looked at my pantry, you'd have a stroke because I have a million jars of herbs and
Oh, fun.
adaptogens and blends.
Yeah.
Um, but as I mentioned yesterday when talking about facial devices,
Yeah.
my problem is consistency, and that's my problem with everything.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
I've gone through my phase of using sun potion herbs daily, and then
Yeah.
I gave it up. I would buy these amazing, supplements, and then I would give them up. So I only started using supplements religiously, and I literally bought one of those like old person
Yeah.
pill boxes
Yes.
where like once a week I spent half an hour and it filled them all out.
Yeah.
And this was when I started perimenopause, and I started experiencing such level of discomfort.
Yeah.
And then once the supplements kicked in, and it took a long time. I think it took about 3 months for me to really see results.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard that's about how long it takes, but you never, you take an Advil, it works in 20 minutes, and you kind
Yeah.
of almost expect that.
Right.
So I almost even gave them up, but then I kind of noticed, I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not having as many hot flashes. And
Nice.
so um, it's, so the evening primrose has been a part of that
Yeah.
journey. And yeah.
Yeah. What you talked about sun potion, like did you find any of their powders to be really amazing? Like I mean, I
I
know they use
loved
renewable ingredients.
Heisha Wu. Um, when I was taking it regularly, it actually also tastes nice, which
Yeah.
helps. Not that I was taking it by
It
itself,
does
but
taste good.
I mean, it's like ashwagandha is really bitter,
Yeah.
so you have to mask its taste. Heisha Wu, I mean, it's a powder. You're not going to just lick it, but
Yeah.
it almost has like a sweetness to it,
Yeah.
um, or at least it's neutral. But when I was taking it regularly and for an extended period of time, I noticed I have terrible nails. They're really thin and weak.
Yeah.
And I was able to grow my nails out for the first time in my entire life. And they were strong and healthy. And
Nice.
so it
Yeah.
was like a visible benefit that I could see.
Yeah. I love that you like tinctures and herbs and all of that. Do you have any others that
Love
you're like,
them.
oh, this for sure is like amazing? I've found out.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think you show up. Sorry, Sun Potion do good stuff.
Yeah.
I think Anima Mundi do some really cool things. I really like their lucid dreaming. They have a tea and they have tinctures.
Yeah.
They really help with sleep. Um, and then I'm kind of always experimenting and trying new things.
Yeah.
Trying to think of any tinctures that I've been using lately. But yeah, I just love playing with this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that you and the woman yesterday, you talked about blue tansy for skin.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what, I haven't used it actually. Like what is a good way to use it and why would we want to use blue tansy?
So it's an ingredient, and it's an ingredient that's become very, very popular in green beauty. I think there's a couple of reasons. So it is calming, and
Mhm.
so as an essential oil, and obviously it has to be used correctly and diluted correctly, but it is calming and anti-inflammatory. So the nice thing about it is it benefits both sensitive skins, acne prone skins, because acne is inflammation. And by the way, with acne, don't take my advice, because that's a serious skin condition and you really need a proper
Yeah.
specialist to talk about it, or certainly not somebody who doesn't have it herself. So my conversation about acne is very much academic. But so yeah, so blue tansy can be of benefit to sensitive, dry, acneic skins, kind
Yeah.
of runs the gamut. Then there's also, when an ingredient becomes popular, you have to think about the market forces and why it became popular.
Yeah.
And blue tansy obviously is gorgeous. It's a bright blue color. It smells wonderful.
Nice.
It's There's some people who don't love the smell, but I think it has that inherent warmth and comforting quality. And
Cool.
so the
It's
blue
easy to market
cocoon,
and push and yeah.
yeah, yeah. And because everybody loved the blue cocoon for a while, it's like we're all making blue balls,
Right. Right.
and
Right.
now, yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned Moss skincare too, that you like
Mhm.
Moss skincare. What do you
Yeah.
what have you learned about them that really impressed you?
Well, I think that so the founder Celestina, she's very interesting. I think she definitely has the kind of mad genius, mad scientist thing going on.
Yeah.
She loves to experiment. She's clearly obsessed with ingredients, and likes kind of playing around with that.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason I recommend them is because I don't know a lot of brands in green beauty that focus specifically on acne. And so
Okay. Right.
people ask me this question, and usually people DM me. I just say, I'm not the person to ask
You're
because
like,
that's
go ask.
not my
Yeah.
lane.
Moss
Um,
skincare.
but they're an easy brand to point to as
That's cool.
someone, yeah, as someone
That's a
who
good
addresses
recommendation.
that issue.
Yeah. Nice. Very cool. You got a question here that I want to honor. So, how often, this is from Kasha in LA, how often do you purge your beauty products closet? Yeah. When do you throw stuff out, Lola? When do you know it's done?
Yeah. So it can be tricky. Now, a lot of the kind of bigger brands and those that have been around for a while
Yeah.
um, put use by date or open by date
Yeah.
on their products. Most will tell you that, especially with water-based serums, because these are active plant, like living plant ingredients, you really want to use them up within 6 months of purchase. Now, that's not always realistic for me because I,
Use a lot of stuff.
I use a lot of
Yeah.
stuff, and I have hoarder tendencies, and
Yeah.
it also just breaks my heart when I've tried something and I know that it's a good product that doesn't work for me. I give it away pretty immediately because and I'll every once in a while I'll do a purge of my kind of unopened stash
Yeah.
and give stuff away because I just know that I have 5 backups that I'm never going to get through, and
Yeah.
so I want somebody to enjoy it. Products that I love, I don't do that with, but with oils I go by scent
Yeah.
because
Like you can tell
if
when
it
it smells
you
bad.
can tell
The
very
only one I
easily.
can't tell with that, I feel like vitamin C, like I have the Claire's vitamin C and it doesn't smell good to me, but I feel like vitamin C kind of can smell bad.
Vitamin C inherently can smell pretty funky. Vitamin C tends to be easy because of color. So
Yeah.
once it starts
Turn
to
red.
oxidize,
Yeah.
it's a pretty good. It's like those color change mugs. Like it gets to a
Yeah.
certain point and you're like, okay, like you're out. So certainly if you have like changes of color or whatever like that, that
Yeah.
is absolutely your clue to toss it. And I think for a normal sane person who's not doing this as like their second job,
Yeah.
it's much easier to keep track of this, and it's much more important to keep turnover. For me, in terms of like big purges, they're at least biannual
Yeah.
because I think that my bathroom and bedroom tend to get overrun with products, and my husband threatens to divorce me, and then I
Yeah.
organize and purge, and then it just all goes
I'm
off a cliff
happy that
again.
Arcana Skin joined because I've really been enjoying their tea tree mask. This
It's
you and
I
you mentioned something of theirs that you really like. It's like their tincture, like it's like a serum, right? That you
It's
like.
a face oil, yeah. It's an oil serum, but honestly, I've been loving everything that I've been using from
Fun.
them, and I love what they've done with the range. It's so
I want to try more.
thoughtful. Sorry,
I want to try more of their stuff.
it's great. It's great. I think it's
Yeah.
really. Mm?
I feel like their mask has been giving me a lot of comfort like during my period because I just feel like just having that. I mean, I have one facialist in San Francisco who says, that tea tree feeling actually causes breakouts. Like she's like, you don't want your face to feel minty. But I mean, there's just a mixed group on that, on how tea tree oil reacts to skin and whether it's too drying and too intense. But I gotta say, having that sensation on my face when I feel like I'm having a breakout, I think it's tamped things down.
It helped me when I felt like I had one time where I was like, yikes, I'm getting a bit of a break on my chin, and I used the mask, and it
Yeah.
was gone by next day.
Right.
Um, I think it's always just important to understand that skincare is incredibly individual as a
Yes.
general principle. Even if you use conventional products, I mean,
Yeah.
the only way to not have an individualized reaction is to use something completely inert like Vaseline, but then like you don't want to put Vaseline in your face and it's still gonna like block your pores and stuff. But
Right.
generally, even with conventional products, some people don't tolerate certain ingredients, some people don't respond to certain things, even medical grade skincare.
Yeah.
There's a reason why acne is such an issue. Something that works for one person is disastrous for another,
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
dermatologists get a lot of grief for prescribing antibiotics for acne. And
Yeah.
I hate that conceptually, but I've also seen evidence of it doing incredible things for some people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and then when you add in the element of natural ingredients,
There's more
it's
allergy
almost
prone,
all bets are off.
more allergenic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to ask you about a couple brands. Like, what do you think of Vintner's Daughter, and do you use it?
I do. I use it. I think it's great. I think that I think it's an absolutely beautiful brand. I think it's a beautiful oil. I love the new essence. It works really well for me. The only thing that I would say, I think that brands that have supremely narrow ranges
Yeah.
have to position themselves as we work for every skin type and every skin concern. And I just don't necessarily think that's the case.
Yeah, that's a
But
really good point you're making. Yeah.
but I think that's, I also would never blame somebody for their narrative because that's their narrative. And,
Yeah.
I think that um, I think it's they're both very active products.
Yeah.
So I would say, and they're expensive. So I would say for
Very
somebody who
expensive.
hasn't tried them,
Yeah.
see if you can get a sample. And I know you can even on the Vigner's website now.
Yeah, I think they
Um,
started samples.
yeah, because I think when you're using
Uh,
something that
yeah.
active, you just want to make sure your skin is okay with it. Because I know
Yeah.
exactly what my skin doesn't like, and I still get surprised. But most
Yeah.
people might not even have that experience.
Okay, what's your opinion on Tata Harper products?
Um, so I tried Tata Harper when it first launched. I think it's very interesting because they're I think they're great products. I think a lot of people love them for a reason. There are some products of Tata's that I adore. It kind of makes me giggle, the narrative of like white linen roaming through the fields of Vermont and handpicking calendula.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a multi-million dollar company with dozens of SKUs and thousands of bottles produced.
Yeah.
And Vermont has, I actually did the research, like a 20-day growing season. They're not, it's New England. Like they're
Yeah.
not growing everything on their farm in Vermont.
Yeah.
And, I think this is one of those brands that definitely had a big push behind it, and a lot of access, both in terms of money and in terms of, when you first launch a brand and you get a 3-page spread in Vogue
Yeah.
writing it up, which like you can't even get as, Chanel or Estee Lauder.
Yeah.
It's because you're best friends with the editor and fellow socialite
Who
who
was
wrote
she?
about it.
Who at Vogue was she best friends with? Do you know?
Uh, yeah, Marina Rust, I think, was the one who wrote about
Oh, interesting.
the
Yeah.
brand. Yeah.
How about
So,
Barbara Sturm?
hmm.
She's like even more complex. I mean, I don't know. Tata, the claim I get against Tata Harper is that the stuff is highly fragranced. But then I look at the ingredients and I don't see that. But I
Yeah,
do love, like, I love how they make my face feel. Some facialists have been like, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't feel minty and fresh. That's actually like not good for your skin. You should be much more like gentle with it. Barbara Sturm, I've gotten the complaint of like she's not actually a dermatologist. She started in like orthopedics, and her products are so expensive. Both of them are so expensive. But
here's
what
the
have you
thing.
found with her?
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. As far as Tata Harper, so I early on tried a few of her products, and those particular products, the kind of serums that seemed to be right for my skin type, didn't work for me.
Yeah,
But a lot of
yeah,
the stuff I've tried since has, and I think generally her products
yeah,
are very good.
yeah,
And I think looking at the entire range, they've now starting to do a little bit of that luxury pricing for the Neiman's customer, where something costs $400 cuz, as opposed to being actually justified
yeah.
by, what's in there.
Right.
But I can't complain about that because I'm a luxury beauty consumer and plenty of people in conventional beauty do it. Yeah.
Okay,
Barbara Sturm.
you guys, this is so small, right? Like this seems like a sample. This thing is $50. And
Yeah.
like I'm not gonna return it because the shipping will be expensive to return it, blah, blah, blah. But like the reason I bought it is because it's coverage. So it's Dr. Sturm. It's like coverage, but it has it's like a clarifying spot treatment. So I thought, okay, I'll try one of her products. When you buy this, it comes with this. It's like a body lotion. but it's hard not to feel like, I mean, what I love about her is she's a thought leader. Like I enjoy listening to all of her interviews. And when I can get behind a woman's knowledge, I want to try their product. But it's hard. It's hard to get behind something that's this small and is so expensive.
So I have to say that, first of all, and I think that actually an even more egregious example of pricing is her hyaluronic serum, because
right, which is an inexpensive ingredient. Like you don't need to charge that much.
Yeah. And I get that there are different molecular weights and whatever.
Yeah.
But the price of it, and if you look at the ingredient deck, and I get it, formulated stock all the time, it's not just the inky, it's actually how they're combined and how they interact.
Yeah.
But there's like literally nothing there to interact, you know?
Right.
But more importantly, I tried her calming drops. I think they were calming drops. And it's not that difficult to do. I mean, it's not easy. Listen, if you're so smart, why aren't you rich, right? Like, it's not that easy, but it's also not that difficult to make calming skincare.
Yeah.
And it did nothing
at
all.
Yeah.
And in terms of being a thought leader, I'm very troubled by her narrative about SPF, right? Because it's...
What does she say about SPF? Oh, she says don't shoot.
She essentially says it's not that important, but I have my sun drops.
Yeah.
But you can just use the drops directly, and you can just mix them in with other products.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're somebody who believes that SPF is a lie put out by the dermatology mafia,
yeah,
we're not on the same page.
Right.
But that's fine, right? Like, don't. If you're telling people put coconut oil on your skin and go hang out in the sun on, at the equator at 2 p.m., I don't want the karmic debt of giving somebody skin cancer, but I get that some people believe that.
Yeah.
But if you're selling an SPF, you're essentially embracing the idea that SPF is helpful, whether for skin health, whether for cancer protection, or, breakdown of collagen that we talked about.
Yeah. That's
not how SPF works. I mean, the whole point of using SPF on top of your other skincare is that if it's diluted, it loses its SPF factor.
Yeah.
So if you're telling somebody to just add, however much they want into their cream, like SPF is not homeopathy. Just because there's one drop.
No, I know. I really hope this doesn't get too loud, the discussion of like SPF or no SPF. I mean, it's very obvious and clear. We all need to be protected. You talked about, yeah.
No, sorry, go ahead, yeah.
You know what I just saw in your face? I saw a little bit of like Kris Jenner.
Oh, God.
No, I mean, she's gorgeous.
No,
she's obviously much older than you. But I mean, you have some sort of, do you feel anything?
I think it's that like dark short hair.
Your beauty influence, anyway, Noble Panacea. You mentioned Noble Panacea, that you love it.
Yeah, I think that, so when you talk about expensive skincare, right, and it's somebody like Augustin Bader, La Mer, the way it originally was, you kind of want to hang your hat on something to justify the cost of your products.
Yeah.
And so there is this kind of trend of the science-backed skincare where we have this proprietary molecule and we have this proprietary formula or patented technology that makes our product unique and does something that no other product does. I find that typically those claims don't actually live up to the hype. And, like I love Augustin Bader, but not because I think it's a miracle cream. I think it's a really nice heavy moisturizer, and I enjoy using it.
There are many more.
But what I like about Noble Panacea is that if you look at the ingredients deck, they have a lot of really cool stuff in there.
Nice.
And so even if they didn't have the proprietary technology that the brand hinges on,
Yeah.
it's just really good ingredients, a bunch of actives, and the packaging is really clever. So
we are getting kicked off in about 30 seconds. So I just want to thank you. It was so fun to meet you. I really love the range
so
of what we talked about. Thank you so much. And I hope we stay in touch, and I'll keep following you, and go follow
Absolutely.
Lola. Okay.
Same.
Bye.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Happy
Bye.
weekend. Bye.
You too. Bye-bye.